What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the final DFS OGs podcast of the season. Always a tough moment. I always love doing these podcasts, but we are going to wrap it up here with some analysis of the divisional round, as always, looking at the fantasy plays. We'll try to better our betting picks, looking at the lines, the spreads, and have a little fun here along the way. So let me bring in my boys, my OGs here. Been joining me all season long. You know them well, headChopper, Notorious. Boys, we got a lot to get to here today. And I'm not even talking about the games. We're going to get to that. That's secondary. I'm talking about females taking down $1 million, which is great, but females that don't even play DFS, seemingly, they don't like fantasy sports. You can now play with your wife and put 300 entries in. So, Derek, I know your wife plays, so there you go. Chop, I'm pretty sure your wife doesn't play, but now you can double up your entries. We got $10,000 boxing matches to talk about. So, guys, there's a lot going on out here in the DFS street. So, Chop, let's go to you, buddy. What thoughts on all these controversies we got going on here to start the new year?
I'm just really excited that we may finally get a boxing match out of this. I actually, there's probably a pretty good chance that somebody bails out, though, man, as it gets closer and the tempers kind of start to, simmer down a little bit.
Which side bails?
Ooh, that's a good one. Man, I'm not going to lie. Draft Cheat's my guy. I like Draft Cheat. But he may have been a little shook last night. He may have been a little shook when he actually got called out to the boxing match. This isn't Siege, man. You're not going to be able to run around the ring and avoid this guy. This guy's actually – but I don't know the specs on Randone. I don't know how big he is. I know Draft Cheat's a pretty big boy, man. And when if you ever get up to him in person, he's got a little size on him. So, but and then Randone may just sit back and go, you know what? I'm too good for this. I'm a former Bachelor contestant. I don't need to be boxing this guy, so he may bail out. I don't know, but hopefully it all goes down. I'll for sure reserve me a plane ticket out to Vegas or wherever they want to do it and watch that sucker.
Oh, absolutely. And it's going to be streamed, a little pay-per-view action. We do need a tail of the tape. Get some measurements and a weigh-in and get some specs on these guys, but interesting. Derek, any thoughts here? Bachelors and 300 entries and boxing matches. Welcome in, buddy, to the new year.
Yeah, I mean, the way this thing has spiraled out of control is a little crazy. I mean, it started with somebody posting the different exposures they had. And it started with Randone congratulating the guy of the relationship. And then it just went from there. And some of the content that we've gotten from this scandal has just been amazing. The videos, all the Draft Cheats tweets have just been amazing. I think I got like 3 hours of work done yesterday, and I was on Twitter for probably 10 hours. So my productivity is taking a hit. As for, the wife playing, yeah, I thought it was a cool story at first, but look, my wife likes sports more than most, and she plays DFS every once in a while. She's not grinding 150 lineups and making sure her exposures match to mine. I'm not saying they did it, but there's a high chance that they were colluding a little bit. But, hopefully, DraftKings will do their thing, make the right decision for the industry. And either way, hopefully we get the boxing match going.
Yeah, for sure. And another great Hitler video. So Draft Cheat, thank you for that, sir. I enjoyed that. Maybe not your finest video, but it's still some good shots in there. And worked the Super Bowl squares angle and the Seth Yates in there, and a little Derek Carty in there. I mean, he hit all the bases with that thing.
Beer, did you see the Dusty video?
I have not. Is there a new video?
That was better than the Hitler video. Dusty, our boy Dusty, man. Whew, buddy.
Big T made an appearance.
He had a Big T cameo in there. It was crazy, man. That was some fun. That was some funny stuff right there.
All right, I'll have to check that out as well. The good keeps getting better here, apparently. So, well, let's go and transition from that, and let's take a look at the games coming off a crazy wild card weekend. So, first of all, how did that go for you guys? I know there were some upsets in Minnesota, obviously. Buffalo had the game in hand, had to piss it away. The end of the Tom Brady New England era. Everybody burying them now. Seattle with a big win. Any thoughts? Wild card weekend. How did the DFS go before we move on here to the division round? Chop, how'd it go last week?
Uh, not particularly well. I started off well with the Derrick Henry, and I thought he was a little bit under-owned, and I was well overweight, but that was totally canceled out by Dalvin Cook being so massively owned, and then putting up the same type of game as Derrick Henry. So those canceled each other out, and then when you're overweight on Michael Thomas, yeah, it's not a good look. So ultimately, as a losing weekend.
Yeah, I was a break-even weekend. Was very high on DK Metcalf. That worked. A little too high on Traquan Smith. Obviously, didn't do much of anything, as did the rest of that New Orleans team. So some decent plays, but didn't piece anything together. Derek, you had a pretty good week out there. Is that correct?
Yeah, by far my best week of the year. It only took me 18 weeks, and it was all thanks to Showdown. My main lineup wasn't very good. Ended up winning the $180 and the $400 in the Texans game, and then finished in the top 5 of those 2 in the Patriots and the Eagles game. So, yeah, it was a good week. Ready to keep it rolling.
All we had to do was take Jacksonville off the slate, and boom, the kid's a winner. So good job, buddy. I'm proud and glad to hear it. And let's keep the ball rolling here. So we got divisional games, 4 games on tap here for us. Once again, DraftKings kept the 4-game slate as their main slate. FanDuel continues to divide it up into Saturday, Sunday. They do have a Saturday, Sunday slate, but it is much smaller. So FanDuel, you're really penalized playing Saturday, Sunday. Yahoo also has a $150,000 tournament. So plenty of action out there. Let's get started, guys. We got Minnesota and San Francisco in the opener. Minnesota, I think, obviously shocked the world. New Orleans was a team I expected to do well in these playoffs, maybe make a run at the Super Bowl, but derailed here. So Cousins, say what you want. He got it done, made some good throws down the stretch. Dalvin Cook looked good. San Francisco sitting back, getting healthy here. So, Derek, let's go to you here. Can Minnesota continue this run? And DFS-wise, do we attack San Francisco through the air? Do we go back to Dalvin Cook and then make way of that San Francisco backfield? I think that's the big question. As a Mostert, do we just not trust it at all? But an intriguing game to start us off here, Vikings and Niners.
Yeah, this is one of those games that's probably better to watch than to target when it comes to DFS, but there's only 4 to choose from this weekend. As far as the Niners go, Minnesota 7th in total DVOA. They're pretty good against the run, pretty good against the pass. Their biggest weakness is by far their secondary. So that's probably how I'll be looking to attack them. Emmanuel Sanders, Deebo Samuel both feel a little bit underpriced. Over the last 3 games, as far as the running back situation goes, Mostert's led the way in terms of snaps, 54%, rushing attempts at 47%, and they gets a few targets as well. So he'd probably be my preferred option there, but they still have a bunch of guys that can mix in. Jimmy G, I don't know why. I just don't trust him in big spots just yet. Maybe I have to see it first. He seems like, he kind of relies on his defense and his coach for a lot of his success, and, maybe he'll get the job done and maybe they'll win the Super Bowl. But for now, I kind of just don't trust him. Don't really want to play him in DFS against his defense. And George Kittle, even though the Vikings are very tough on tight ends, doesn't matter. Kittle is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, and I certainly like him this weekend. For the Minnesota side, Kirk Cousins, I joked about it last week that, it wasn't a primetime game, and he played pretty well. For whatever reason, he just doesn't like those nighttime games. This is a morning game, so that should help him a little bit. I won't be playing him in DFS because he does face one of the best pass rushes and one of the best secondaries in the NFL. I think the best way for them to move the ball is going to be through Dalvin Cook. Ended up playing 78% of the snaps last week against the Saints, had 30 touches. I wish I would have had more exposure to him last week, but probably won't be making that mistake again. I think he's an excellent play, and I do think his ownership is probably going to be pretty low once again. As far as the receivers go, Diggs will probably run more routes against Sherman than Thielen will, so I'll side with Thielen once again. He had the big game last week, and I think Cousins is going to go to him often. So I like Cook, I like Thielen, but for the most part, this isn't a game that I plan to have a ton of exposure to.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. I do like Dalvin Cook. I mean, you look at some of the numbers for the Niners. They have allowed over 100 yards rushing in the majority of the games this season. So the defense is good, but we've seen some lapses out of this team and been giving up some points here towards the end of the season, Chop. So are people going to look at the San Francisco team and avoid it because they've been a good defense? I say recently they haven't been as good of a defense. So are you attacking them? Are you staying more of a sit-back approach like Derek is on this game? Thoughts here to open us up, Vikings and Niners.
Well, first of all, Minnesota, it was a good win in New Orleans, man, but I'm shocked that a veteran team like New Orleans with all this playoff experience could get beat at home like that against an inferior opponent that they shouldn't have been beat by. And they ruined all my Wong teasers, man. They just blew everything right out the water. So I was very disappointed in that. But for some reason, like Drew Brees, man, just never got into a groove against the secondary that should have been very susceptible. Just never got the ball going to Mike Thomas. Never, like, it just is baffling to me sometimes how these teams don't pick up the pace and play with a little more tempo when offensively they're not going very well. And then New Orleans never did that and then came back and bit them. So I don't think Frisco has that problem. I don't want to attack the San Francisco defense. I think they'll be better than they were all at the latter part of the year. So if people want to load up on Cook, go for it. I'm probably gonna fade him. I've been making some lineups already, kind of feeling it out, and it is very, very difficult to do Dalvin Cook in the same lineup with, let's say, a Lamar Jackson and a good wide receiver. It's just tough to do, especially on DraftKings. Almost impossible. You feel really terrible about your other 6 players out there. So I think you got to pick and choose some spots here, and I think Cook may be a fade for me just because I want to play more Lamar than some of these other good wide receivers. On the Frisco side, here's the problem, and I talk about this. Me and Big T talk about this in our showdowns a lot when we have San Francisco. You always love Frisco to put up points, but how the hell do they get there? Because you look at the running backs, Mostert is leading the way now, but even that means that he's capped at his most carries since Breida came back from injury. He's been 14 carries. He's going to sit between 10 and 14 carries. Coleman's going to be between 3 and 6 carries. Breida, 2 and 5 carries. Like, it's hard to pin it down. They're so touchdown dependent. You're going to have to get a touchdown or two out of one of these guys to make them pay off. So that's tough. Their wide receivers, Emmanuel Sanders had the big blow-up game against New Orleans. Other than that, he hasn't been particularly good since the trade to San Francisco. Then you think about Debo. Well, since Kittle came, Debo had 2 massive games while Kittle was hurt. When Kittle came back, Debo really hasn't done all that much since then. I got stats, man. I pulled up stats this week. I got them. Yeah, I got them.
Some air yards for us?
I know no air yard. I don't mess around with that. That's too big time stuff right there. But like, Debo hasn't really been all that great since Kittle came back from that little 2-game injury. So, like, where are they going to get? Obviously, Kittle's the guy, man. If you're looking for Frisco to score points, you can play Kittle. So that's the number one guy I'll be targeting on San Francisco. The rest of this stuff is just – it's tough. And like Big T always says, like, if you're going to take chances on guys like Richie James and who else is out? Dante Pettis.
Bourne.
Yeah, if you're taking it, like, there's just no reason to do – you're lucky if they get a touchdown, and there's just not much upside. So even on a 4-game slate, I totally get those guys out of my player pool.
Yeah, I mean, on a showdown slate, okay, you're looking for that $200, $400 guy that can do something, score a touchdown. It's much more valuable if a guy just scores a touchdown in a showdown slate. In a 4-game slate, okay, Kendrick Bourne scored a touchdown. Is that going to do you any good? So I kind of like Debo. I really like Kittle. I'm with you guys on that one. I think he's obviously the engine that makes this thing go. But Debo's a guy that get involved in the rushing game as well, which may take away from Mostert, some of those guys. I mean, 2 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, 33, 28, 33. The rushing yards are there. Doesn't get a ton of targets, but efficient with the ones he does get. So Debo would be the guy that I'm willing to take a shot on in that offense. But outside of that, it's tough to trust Garoppolo. These defenses, what about the defenses? Because that's always a tough thing to play here in these 4-game slates. Which defense here, Chop, stands out, or are there better plays down the line?
Oh, San Francisco for sure. I don't have a lot of interest in Minnesota's defense, and San Francisco, I do think that they get to Kirk Cousins, and I think they do all the things this week that we thought New Orleans would do to them last week. They just never did. I think Frisco does that this week.
Yeah, Derek, any thoughts there on the defenses?
Yeah, I mean, this leads into the betting section, but hammer the Niners defense. $3K is a great price point. We're not really paying that much more than we are for the other defenses in the slate, and they do have one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. I think they're going to get to Cousins, and if they're playing with the lead, I mean, they're just going to pin their ears back in this one.
Yeah, and how many times have we seen a team get a really emotional win and the locker room's going crazy and then go and lay a dud the next week because they laid it all on the line to beat New Orleans? Now you got to travel across the country, play a team that's well-rested, a team that's better than you in their house. You could just see Minnesota really going flat here. So I agree with you guys. San Francisco defense, the way to go here. Betting-wise, Derek, you brought it up. And we got some updated totals on the betting line. So we're going to see who came out the winner here and how we did overall. So we'll get to that at the end of the show. But here we go. Last picks of the year. We got San Francisco -7 at home. The total sitting at 45. Chop, let's go to you here first.
Frisco all day, all day.
Derek.
Same. Opened at 6.5. I would much prefer that over 7, but still take Frisco at 7.
Clean sweep here, Minnesota. I don't think they can pull it up again and make it happen again. So I agree. If you can find 6.5, jump on it. I think this could go possibly to 7.5 if you get enough action on San Francisco. So I will agree, though. San Francisco -7. All right, Saturday night we have Baltimore entering the playoffs here now, coming off that bye. Against Tennessee. Went into New England, got it done. Got to give them credit. It was a heavy Derrick Henry game plan. They've been very efficient here since Ryan Tannehill took over. No different last week in New England. Can they do it again here, Chop? I mean, this is a one team that was kind of faltering down the stretch, losing to Miami. So we kind of saw the end of New England coming. Now you got Lamar Jackson and company at home who have been a steamroller here. So does Tennessee have any shot in this game? Chop.
Yeah, they got a shot because they are playing real well right now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I got you now. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, they do have a shot at it. Before I even get to that, though, I do want to point out there's actually people on the internet. There's actual people on Twitter who are trying to bend statistics to say that Ryan Tannehill's game.
Oh, I saw that.
was more important to Tennessee's victory than the Derrick Henry game, that the passing is so much weighted in. Like, man, guys, you have
who's doing that? Come on.
Yeah.
It's a guy. Watch the game. I mean, Derrick Henry dominated
exactly.
that game.
It's a guy that not only do I not follow because he was so biased against the running backs, but I had to mute all of the things surrounding him because I kept seeing the retweets pop up in my timeline. I was just done with it. I don't want to see it no more. Such a bias against running backs that you'll try to bend it to where you say Ryan Tannehill's 72 yards passing was more important to a victory against New England than the Derrick Henry game. All right, okay, bud, you win. I'm done with you. But Tennessee does have a chance to win because they are playing hot. They do have a great running offensive line. If Derrick Henry gets rolling downhill, they play keep away. They could play keep away from Lamar. You know, in a good scenario for Tennessee, they could absolutely pull the upset here. I don't think they do it, but it's there for them. But I like Baltimore in this game. We'll get to the spreads later. But since I like Baltimore and I think they control this game, I don't think we see as big of a Derrick Henry game. So I'm not as much on Derrick Henry and DFS. I would probably lean more towards the passing game here if I was going to do anything, but it's not a great matchup for Tennessee, period. It's the Baltimore side that's interesting. I want to load up on Lamar, man. I came into this thing going, I'm going to have so much Lamar Jackson. Then I started building some lineups just to play around with salaries and realized just how hard it is to stuff that salary in on DraftKings. Last week, the gap between, I think it was Drew Brees or whoever was the top quarterback on DraftKings, the gap was like $1,200 or $1,400, something crazy. This week, the gap is $3,000. Like Lamar's 8,400, and I think Tannehill's down at like 5,400. Yeah. So it's something ridiculous. It's so hard to build good teams with Lamar Jackson. So I don't know how that's going to play out. I love Lamar. I love Mark Ingram. I got some numbers for you, though. We've been, like, ingrained that you have to pair your quarterback with a pass catcher in tournaments. I don't think you have to do that this week, not with Lamar Jackson specifically. Over the last 14 games, after week 2 when they played Miami and then Arizona, the last 14 games, Baltimore doesn't have a 100-yard receiver or tight end over that whole span. Nothing, none of those things. After that week 2 game against Arizona, Mark Andrews, their leading guy, has only averaged 48 yards a week receiving. Like, Ingram's had 6 games of like 29 or more yards receiving. So if I was going to pair Lamar with anybody, I may pair him with the running back, Mark Ingram, then you get all the rushing touchdown equity, and you get a little piece of the passing game. And, man, I don't think you have to pair your quarterback. If you're taking Lamar, I don't think you need to pair him even in tournaments with a wide receiver. I just don't think it's worth it. So that's my take on that. I do like Marquise Brown. I do like Mark Andrews, all those guys in a vacuum, but I don't think you have to pair either one of them with Lamar to win tournaments.
And I got some numbers here to add on to that. So, I mean, you don't necessarily always pair quarterback, running back, but I think it'll be contrarian. We look at some of the numbers for Ingram. The last 3 times that he's crossed 20 fantasy points on DraftKings, Lamar Jackson has had some of his biggest days in those same games. So, the argument is always the running back's having a big day, the quarterback can't. You look at some of the games Lamar's had in those big games for Mark Ingram, 32, 36, 37 DraftKings points. So those two seem to be very correlated together. They get the running game going. Is it as good of a matchup as they've had in the past? No. Tennessee good against the run, but I really like that call and the correlation that a lot of people are going to try to force in Hollywood, Andrews, and that's fine, but going a little different here, any little small difference you can make on a 4-game slate, I think really helps. So I like that call a lot, Chop, Jackson and Ingram. Derek, your thoughts here? We got the big Derrick Henry game. Do we go back to that? And then do you agree with us here on Baltimore? Is there a different way to go here? An interesting game here with Titans and Ravens.
This is why I like doing the pod with you two. You guys are sharp dudes. I wasn't really expecting to play a lot of Mark Ingram before coming onto the pod, but you make some good points, and I do think you can pair him up with Jackson. I don't think that would be a very popular route. It might be pretty popular individually, but playing them together, I think that's going to be very contrarian. And I like it quite a bit. You get all the rushing touchdowns, and that might be all the touchdowns for the Ravens. So I do like that call. Lamar, you guys mentioned he's just been awesome. He's top 26 fantasy points in every game but one since week 6, and he's top 32 fantasy points 6 times during that stretch. I'm fine pairing him up with Brown or Andrews. I mean, their prices have at least come down to match their production. So while they haven't had huge ceiling games, they are cheaper than they were earlier in the year. But wouldn't be messing with any of the ancillary pieces of Snead, Boykin, Roberts, any of those guys. For the Titans, it's really just Derrick Henry or bust. The only way they're going to win this game or at least keep it competitive is if they can give it to him early and often. We saw him have 35 touches for 206 yards last week against the Patriots. I just don't think they're going to be able to move the ball through the air. So if they get down big, it could be trouble. And then, we could see the Ravens defense have a really big outing. I just don't trust, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, who put up a 0 last week against the secondary. They have Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, and Earl Thomas back there. It's going to be really tough for the Titans passing game. And not to get too sidetracked, but how bad was the coaching in this wild card round? I mean, we had the Bills and Texans game, which was one of the crazier games I've ever seen. Some of the decisions made by Bill O'Brien and then were terrible. And then we had the Saints playing it safe. I mean, they kept their timeout with over 2 minutes to go. They could have stopped the clock with like 2.5 minutes, and then they kind of ran out of time in their last drive of the game where they kicked a field goal. They would have plenty of time to score a touchdown. And then you had the Patriots playing it safe. They didn't go for it on 4th and short. We've seen Belichick go for it on 4th down in his own territory in years past. So it was very strange to see some of the coaching decisions last week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Buffalo blew it, and it was a combination of the coaching and Josh Allen. That lateral was maybe the worst football play I've ever seen. New Orleans not calling that timeout, and it was like 2:50 on the clock, and you still had the 2-minute warning in play, and to run that all the way down made no sense. So, yeah, it was bad, and coaches cost these teams some games. I mean, Drew Brees didn't help, Josh Allen didn't help, but some of the most egregious coaching I've seen. Chop, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't, for the life of me, man, I don't understand how you can have all this money invested into a franchise like this and have all these auxiliary coaches out there. You have a backup tight ends coach. This guy just coaches the backup tight ends, all these crazy but you don't have a clock manager coach that tells you, hey, Sean, you know what? Your best bet right now would be to take this time out at 2:35. And then we'll have an actual chance to win this game and not just play for the field goal here. And instead he lets it run down to the 2-minute warning, and then never uses the timeout that he didn't spend. Never uses it. That just baffles me how you don't have like a clock manager coach that just does nothing but that's his whole job is to focus on that. Some of these guys are really terrible at it. I don't understand it. It just makes you think, just how sharp are these guys really?
And why do these teams play for ties? Like, go for the damn touchdown. End this game. But you really want to go to a coin toss, which is a whole nother thing that needs to change.
Yeah, man.
That is
Dude,
as archaic as it gets. Is we're letting heads or tails decide who wins these games. It should be like the college game. Each team gets a chance. Best team's going to win the game. It's going to go blow for blow, just like it would in boxing and UFC and any other sport. You're going to go toe-to-toe. The better team's going to win, not, oh, we won the coin toss. We got the ball first. We ended up winning. So even the stupid change of the field goal, the other team still gets it. No. They need to change that now. That needs to be one of the focuses of the offseason, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would add on to that the Saints in regulation, their entire season, because they had a timeout and because they took that, that penalty that ran off 10 seconds, and for some reason they took that 10-second runoff with it.
Yeah.
Like, because of that, I was just sitting there thinking when Will Lutz was lining up for a field goal, this 13-3 season all comes down to a 46-yard field goal because you didn't manage the clock right. Now, I know he made it and they went to overtime. They had a chance. They still lost because that's just justice. But their entire season came down to a 46-yard field goal because, you mismanaged the clock. It's just baffling, man.
With a kicker who missed one earlier in the game from a shorter distance. You're putting the game in his hand. I know he's been good this season, but I'm sorry. I'm putting the game in Drew Brees' hands well before I'm putting the game in my kicker's right foot. So crazy. All right, where do we leave? I think we got our analysis in, right? We got to make a spread pick here. Is that where we're at?
Yep.
Got any final thoughts in that game, or are we just making a pick here?
Pick them.
All right, we got Baltimore minus 8.5, 46.5 on that total. Derek, we'll go to you.
I think the game stays competitive for 3 quarters, but I think the Ravens end up winning this by double digits, so I will take Baltimore.
Chop.
Man, I tell you, it all comes down to the Ravens' defense for me. Are they for real? Because they put up some great numbers in the second half of the year. Or was it just a product of looking at some of the quarterbacks they played? Boy, I'll tell you what, they played some bad quarterbacks. Is that what generated some of those big numbers for their defense? So if their defense is real, they'll definitely win this game. I'm going to go with the Ravens in the spread just because the wild card weekend can always be a little wild. But when you get to this weekend right here, the cream of the crop usually rises. So I think Baltimore is the better team. I think they win this game going away.
I am going to go with the under here. You have 2 teams that really like to run the ball a lot. I think you could see a lot of, clock grinding down and quarters that you don't get a lot of points. I know the Ravens have put a ton of points on the board, but if Tennessee can establish that run, we saw them go on some long drives in that game against New England. Baltimore wants to do the same thing, and the number trending down. Opened up at 48.5, went to 47. Now we're down to 46.5. So I'm going to take the under in this one. All right, let's move on to Sunday. Early action, we got Kansas City and Houston, a rematch. I think it was week 7 or so. This was week 6. These 2 teams played this exact setup in Kansas City. Houston was able to win that game, 31-24. Nice performance by Deshaun Watson there. So, Chop, we'll go to you here first. Houston survived that play by Watson where he was dead to rights, somehow makes a play out of that. Tends to do this at the end of games, make things happen for his team. It's a tough draw, though, going to Kansas City in the playoffs, taking on Mahomes and company. So does Houston have a shot here? Can they repeat what they did last week, what they did earlier in Kansas City, or do you just see the Chiefs rolling here at home?
No, I think, in the right scenario, Houston can pull the upset here because they do have a quarterback that can do a lot of things. Like when the third down comes and you absolutely have to convert, he can use his legs. He does that. He's pretty good in the pocket. So there's a scenario where they definitely can win this game. The Chiefs' defense has looked really good lately, but I don't know if some of those numbers are skewed. I'm looking at some of the people they've faced off against. I'm not too impressed. So. But for Houston, like the Kansas City defense has been really good against wideouts of late. Well, I don't think you're going to, if Will Fuller plays, you're going to have a hard time handling both Fuller and Hopkins. I think Hopkins has a really big game here. I don't think you can cover him he's not a guy who needs separation anyway. He's going to, just throw it to him in a game like this. I can see Hopkins having a big game. So I think Houston scores some points, keeps this thing close. I think they do it with Watson and Hopkins and maybe Fuller if Fuller plays. If Fuller doesn't play, I'll go back to Darren Fells and Kenny Stills as secondary targets in that offense. I think there's enough meat on the bone there. Kansas City's the interesting team. They're pretty cut and dry, man. Mahomes, 2 big pass catchers, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Either one of those guys, I'm going to stay away from. There'll be some sprinklings in there of people throughout this weekend playing DeMarcus Robinson, Hardman, or Pringle. I'll avoid all those guys, man. I just want the big 2. I want Hill or Kelce in this offense. Damian Williams is the running back I want. I think Kansas City puts up points, so I think all 4 of those guys, Mahomes, Williams, Hill, and Kelce, are perfectly fine plays.
Another guy I liked last week, found the end zone, didn't do much, but had his best game of the season against Kansas City in this same spot. Carlos Hyde, Derek. The Chiefs not good against the run. 26 for 116 in that game, 22 DraftKings points. So if we get anywhere near that at 5K, I think he's viable. I think Will Fuller, a big domino. This offense just so much better when he's in there. Didn't do much in that game, but it opens up things for Stills, for Hopkins, for the tight ends, or the running game. So I think that's a big one to keep an eye on. Pretty much agree with Kansas City side. I think you can play any of those guys, any combinations here. I think we do get a pretty good shootout in this one. But Carlos Hyde, Derek, agree, disagree here? 5K, pretty nice price here on DraftKings.
Yeah, he's one of the more interesting decisions that we have to make at running back because the best way to beat the Chiefs has been on the ground. They're 6th in DVOA against the pass, 29th in DVOA against the run, but game script is a big concern. They're 9.5-point underdogs, so if they get down big, it's going to be the Duke Johnson show, who actually played pretty well last week too. So I'll probably have sprinkles of both running backs and just kind of play both game scripts, but I don't think I'll be locking either one into my main lineup. I don't mind Watson. Chiefs don't have the best pass rush, and they have allowed the 10th most rushing yards to quarterbacks. We saw in the second half, Watson just took over, had 14 rushes for 55 yards in that game. I kind of think, he'll be scrambling to make as many plays as he can in this one as well. And like you guys mentioned, if Fuller's active, I think that helps this offense as a whole. If he's out, I don't mind going to Stills again. I don't mind going to Hopkins, even though the Chiefs have been very good against receivers. You can beat them with tight ends, but I don't think I really want to play Fells, maybe, in a sprinkling of lineups here and there. And then with the Chiefs, I agree with you guys. It's just the 4 main guys. Mahomes, you can pair him up with Hill, you can pair him up with Kelce, and you can even pair him up with Damian Williams, try to get all the touchdowns there for the Chiefs. You can beat the Texans on the ground or through the air. And I think Williams is going to be my favorite point per dollar running back play of the week. He played on 66% of the snaps in Week 17. I don't think they want to, roll out LaShawn McCoy, Spencer Ware for more than a handful of snaps. So I think it's going to be the Damian Williams show. We kind of saw him take over toward the end of last season, and he had some really big games in the playoffs as well. So I love Damian Williams.
All right, spread-wise, it's climbing towards the Chiefs. It's been really moving that direction. Early on here, we're up to -10 here on the Sharp Side app, which if you haven't downloaded yet, we talk about it every week. Great place to go for spreads, totals, player props for all the different sports. A contest going on right now. Lock in some lock bets for a chance to win some FanDuel credit. Just have to go on a streak. So no time like now to jump in and download Sharp Side. So -10 here for the Chiefs. Derek, 51 on that total.
I like the idea of taking the 10 with the Texans and taking the over. If this game stays close, I do think it'll be high scoring. So give me that little 2-team parlay.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same mindset. I definitely like the total going over. We saw him go over 50 in the first game. I think we're going to get another shootout here. I'm leaning Houston, but I'll just lock in the over for now. Chop, what do you got here?
I like the over. I think Kansas City can put up points, and I don't think Deshaun Watson lets this team get blown out of the water, so he'll keep pace, eventually maybe even picking up the pace of the game for the Texans offense, which would help with the over.
Yeah, I just think Houston can hang around and make this go over that total. So three on the total, and Derek with the nice little parlay there. So throw that in your sports book. All right, last game. Seattle and Green Bay. Seattle, ugly game in Philly, but got it done. It wasn't the prettiest thing out there, but you got to give him credit, especially DK Metcalf. Just comes up huge in that game, makes some massive plays. Now go to Green Bay. An intriguing game here, Chop. A game I think is going to be very close. I actually think Seattle ends up winning this game, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But where do we go here? More talk of Marshawn Lynch is going to get the ball more. Do we just trust Russell Wilson? Do we go back to DK Metcalf? Do we swerve to Lockett? And then Green Bay. Is it Rodgers in the passing game? Is it Aaron Jones in the running game? Wrap us up here. Seattle and Green Bay.
Yeah, Seattle's another one of these teams where the coaching is just totally suspect, man, almost all the time. Like, it's clear as day. I mean, it can't be any more clear that this offense is at its best when you let Russell Wilson get up to the line with a little bit of tempo and improvise, sometimes even call his own plays, and scramble around and run. Instead, they want to just turn around and slow this thing down and hand it off. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Marshawn Lynch, who matches up theoretically best with Green Bay, if we see Marshawn Lynch get a bunch of carries. But if Seattle was smart, they'd let Russell do his thing on offense. I don't know if they're going to do that, though. So that'll be the big thing. But I'll go back to Russell. I'll hope that Aaron Rodgers can score some points and push the pace so that Russell Wilson – They let Russell have more stuff here, more responsibility. I like Russell. I like Tyler Lockett this week a lot more than DK Metcalf. That was a really good matchup for Metcalf last week. I think this is a better matchup for Tyler Lockett. I could sprinkle in some Jacob Hollister. I do think he's the next option in line after Metcalf and Lockett. That's pretty much what I want for Seattle and Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to score some points here. I think it's clear Davante Adams is number one, and just as clear, Allen Lazard is taking over the number 2 role. So I do like Lazard this week because almost impossible to put like Lamar Jackson, Davante Adams, and then a good tight end on your lineup. Like, it's just tough, man. So got to find a way to save some money. I like Lazard as a money saver this week. Jamal Williams should be back. That's going to take away from Aaron Jones's touches. When they're both healthy, it's like a 55-45 split in favor of Jones. You can go there for the upside, and another big salary. I don't know if you can afford it, man, and for just a flyer pick like that. But, yeah, I hopefully if things work out right, Green Bay puts points on the board and makes Seattle catch up to them. That'd be the perfect game script for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to play Russ, that's what you're going to need because they are going to try to run the ball. And, again, we're trying to work Marshawn Lynch more into the game plan. I mean, sure, he scored touchdowns, but it doesn't look like the same guy to me. But agree with the Tyler Lockett call. I think I want to go back to that way instead of going with Metcalf, who was great. But Lockett is now cheaper than Metcalf on DraftKings. So I will take that discount. Green Bay side, Derek, I got it way off the radar flyer. Give me some Jimmy Graham against his former team. Seattle's been terrible against tight ends. Graham, 7 targets last week. I know it's been ugly. He's dust. He's washed, whatever you want to say. But Jimmy Graham, 3,300. Talk me off of that ledge here against Seattle.
Unfortunately, I cannot talk you off. I'm right there with you. I think he's one of the better salary savers of the week. I know there are a lot of good tight ends to spend up on, but 3,300 helps you kind of fill out the rest of your lineup. As you mentioned, Seattle really bad. They're almost as bad as Arizona against tight ends. And I forgot about the revenge narrative, so you got that going for you as well. The rest of the Packers, I really like the spot for Aaron Jones. I know Jamal Williams is going to cut into that workload, but Seattle just really bad against the run, 26 in DVOA. They give up a lot of catches to running backs as well. And Jones, I think he's going to get 60+% of the work here. And if Rodgers doesn't miss him, a few times for easy touchdowns, then I think he's going to have a nice day. Probably won't be playing Rodgers. He hasn't had a lot of upside so far this season. But I like Adams. I like Lazard, like Chop mentioned. I think he's a nice salary saver as well. So it's kind of weird to like all of Rodgers' pass catchers and not really want to pair him with Rodgers. But that's kind of how I am at this point of the week. And then for the Seahawks, yeah, Carroll came out and said he wants to feature Marshawn Lynch this week. I'm not sure I'm buying it. I think the best thing to happen to the Seahawks is that the running backs all got hurt, and now they're forced to kind of air it out with Russell Wilson. Even in the game where they were playing from ahead, he had 30 pass attempts and 9 rushing attempts last week against the Eagles. And then in week 17, he had like 45 total touches, if you will, against the Niners. So I think it's going to be another Wilson week. I like Lockett, like you too. Now that he's cheaper than Metcalf, I think that makes a lot of sense to swerve to him. And I don't mind David Moore and Jacob Hollister as nice value plays as well. Moore's been playing pretty much 70+% of the snaps as a wide receiver 3. And then Hollister had a tough matchup last week, a little bit better this week against the Packers. They're much better against receivers than they are against tight ends.
All right, last betting picks of the season here. We got Green Bay -4 at home, 46 on the total, Derek.
This one is really tough. The 4 points seems like too much, so I will take the Seahawks +4, but I don't like them on the money line like you do.
Yeah, I'm taking Seattle here. I've watched this Green Bay team. I've been unimpressed all season long. They've looked good in spots, but I don't think they're as good as their record indicates. Seattle has been fantastic on the road this season. I think they're 8-1, or after that win in Philadelphia. I think they win this game, so I will gladly take the 4 here and the old sprinkle on the money line for me. Hate to say it as a Green Bay fan. All my cheeseheads out there, hate to say it, but I think Seattle wins this game. Chop, what do you got?
Well, Beer doing some serious reverse jinxing there. I get it. I know where you're coming.
You got to do what you got to do. It's playoff time.
I mean, I think Green Bay probably, ekes this one out, but I do like taking the points with Seattle. I don't think there's a ton of separation. I think the separation in these teams is that it's at Green Bay. If it was at Seattle, it'd be Seattle probably as a slight favorite, and I take Seattle. But in this case, Seattle's the underdog. I'll take Seattle.
All right, now let's take a look at the final tallies of the season. I want to give a shout-out to a listener out there, Jeff Chedister, picked up the ball and ran with it here and put together an outstanding spreadsheet for us. Said he loves the pod. I got to pull up his quote, Chop. He specifically liked one of your quotes, so I got to find it here. Give me a minute. It had to do with Andy Dalton. You remember the Andy Dalton quote, Chop?
There might have been. There's a couple of them, but it might have been something to the tune of red on the head, red on the head,
like a dick on a dog. Something along those lines. So, but he loves the show. Loved that quote there, and really did a good job with this. So he has a RotoGrinders care package headed his way. So I wanted to give him a shout out here on the pod. Thank you for listening, and appreciate the hard work. So, drum roll. We ready for the totals here, boys?
Let's
do it.
So we have just total wins. We have one with 95, one with 97, one with 98.
Ooh, that means Chop won the unit bets because he abstained from too many games early in the year.
There were some abstaining, definitely. Chop made the least amount of picks with 173. Derek 179, and I had 184. So overall, group total, we were 54.1% on our picks. So getting out some winners there. So third place, 95 wins, myself. So the lowest percentage, the most picks and the least amount of wins. The wild card weekend did not help me at all. 0 for 4 on those picks, so hopefully you didn't listen to those. But 51.6% for the season on the spreads and totals. 97 wins. Derek, 97 of 179, 54.2% overall, which gives the win to Chop. Most wins, fewest picks. So he was selected. He was efficient. You were the Ryan Tannehill of the picks here, Chop. 98 of 173.
Golf clap.
56.6%. You are the champ here, Chop. Take the stage here. It's the Grammys, the Golden Globe, whatever. You're the big winner here, Chop. What do you got to say?
Man, why can't this? When is the legalized betting going to come to Texas? I'm fiending for it now, man. I got to have some legalized betting. That's why we got to have this boxing match. So just for an excuse to get to Vegas and play some bets.
There you go. So that will wrap us up, though. Again, thank you to Jeff. Thank you to Eric earlier in the season for doing the first half of the season. Guys, we love the listeners out there. We're getting some great feedback. Really glad you guys enjoy the show, and just want to say thank you for listening each and every week, all season long. I think I could speak for both of these guys. We love doing the show, but it's great hearing that good feedback. So thank you to you guys. I also want to send a shout-out to Devin at RotoGrinders. Puts up with my BS, gets this thing out to you guys every week. So, Devin, thank you for your hard work. And thank you to you two. Always make me think more and look into things more. And it makes me a smarter player hanging out with you guys. So, shout out to you guys and, of course, all the great listeners out there. So, final thoughts from you guys here. Chop, we'll go to you. Wrap us up here for this season. What do you got for the peeps?
I mean, it came, it flew by, and now we're into the podcast. That means that we're on to the last two major things of the year after this, which is the 2-game slate, and then in a couple weeks, and we'll do the showdown. So just flies by, man. Now we got to sit around, and the weekends are going to get pretty boring after this is all over with. So that sucks. But yeah, just like you said, appreciate everybody listening. I mean, I find it hard to believe that people would actually sit down and take their time to listen to a podcast like this. Like, it's just weird that, I mean, I don't know. So I do appreciate, like, it's just weird, right? That people want to sit down and take time out of their day to listen to it when there's a lot of entertaining stuff out there you could be doing or watching or listening to. But we appreciate you listening to this one, and we'll be back next year. I'm almost sure of it, and we'll see if we can't crack that 60% mark.
There we go. We got new goals here. I gotta be more efficient in my picks. I gotta abstain more, like Derek. So I wonder if all your Jags money line picks made it onto this sheet. So I'll have to go back and look at that. But Derek, final thoughts here, buddy, for the season, for the divisional round here, for the playoffs. What do you got for the peeps?
Yeah, thanks to everyone that listened throughout the year. Thanks to everyone that left us some nice reviews on iTunes. That was good. And as always, been a blast with you too. I hope to see you guys at the Super Bowl party. You guys going to be there?
I will definitely be there. Chop.
Oh, yeah, I got going. Definitely got the plane tickets already.
There we go.
Nice.
Party
and
time in Nashville, baby.
And final note, if you guys get bored on the weekends, play some fantasy golf. I love fantasy football, but fantasy golf, man, that has my heart. So if you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, get over to RotoGrinders. Great content. Just because we aren't doing the pods anymore, there's plenty of other great stuff there to get you ready for golf. NFL, NBA projections have been killing it. So something for everybody. If you haven't jumped in yet, now's the time. Make sure you go check it out. Download the SharpSide app as well. And best of luck this week, next week, and the rest of the season and all your sports. And hopefully we're back. Let them know. You want the OGs back? Reach out to the people at RotoGrinders and let them know we'll want the OGs back in the house. But again, to wrap it up, thank you to you two. Thank you to everybody for listening. For RotoGrinders.com, I am Beer, speaking for Chop, speaking for Noto. We thank you. We are out.